Well, I would love to welcome in all locations. Paulden, that's you. Online family, that's you, wherever you are. And today, Prescott Valley, that's you, but it's unique today because we didn't know if you'd be able to join us or if Ben was going to have to speak or if you were going to have sound at all. But there's been a team there working, and I would just love if we could, Prescott, could we thank the Prescott Valley production team? They got it up and going. Well done, team. We're glad you're with us, Prescott Valley. Prescott, welcome to you. Well done. It's freezing cold and you're here. Good job. Are you warm? Okay, probably not as warm as those at home under blankets on the online family live gathering, but welcome. We're glad you're here. Special welcome to those of you that this is your first time, whether that's in this room, whether that's on the online family or any other location. We just want you to know that we're honored that you would take a risk. And what I mean by that, we're honored that you would take a risk to be here with the Heights family and take one of the most prized commodities we have is time, and that you would invest time here and entrust it to us. We just really want to honor that, and we hope that what you experience, whether it be in this room or one of the other rooms or on the online family, that you are loved and cared for. We are grateful that you would walk with us. Those of you that this is your second, third, you've been here a month, you're still trying to figure out, like, is this where I'm going to plant my feet? Welcome to you. We're grateful that you're with us, and family who some of you are real familiar because you've been here a while. We're glad that you're on the journey with us and we get to do this together. That idea of together is what we're going to have a conversation about today. The big thought behind it is together is one of our values as a church family. It's one of the things that anchors us true north. And it's the idea that we were designed by God to be in family together. That what we get in our salvation, what we get that Jesus has given us in new birth is new birth into a family. And this family, this gathering that we call Heights, this community, the idea that we walk alongside life together is God's design. That we are, you'll hear language around here of we're better together. And so I had, if you don't know, on our online gathering at the end of it, I'll go from here, or whoever's communicating will go from here and go sit with Pastor Owen, and he often asks different questions. And last week I sat with him and he goes, okay, I got to ask, it's January and we're doing this series on together and mission and vision, and like, why now? Why at this point? And I told him, I said, for me, I've met a lot of people over the last couple of years that are new to our Heights family, that are new to this space. And I said, I've met a lot of old people that have been here a long time and they just love Heights and they love the family, but they have no clue what we're doing. And I told him that if I was you and I was new to the space, or I was old and been a part of it for a while, and that I would want to know what I'm saying yes to, that I would want to know that the people I'm connecting to and the people I'm choosing to do this life together, that my heart and what God's put on me aligns with what we're doing as a church family. And so this 3-week thing that we're in week 2, that we're anchored into this series, into this conversation for the perspective of we want you to know what you are stacking hands with us on. We want some alignment around when we talk about mission. And so last week, if you were here, we talked specifically about how we're all individuals, right? That God has rescued us, God has saved us, God has given us this gift of being servants of His, which is another value for us, that we're just servants. We're not the big thing. Jesus is the big deal, and we're here to make much of Jesus. And so as servants, it's a gift. And part of that idea last week was, as servants on an individual level, we've been given unique tasks that have been given to each of us. But what anchors us together, while we're all individuals, what anchors us together is our mission. That God has given us one mission, that we are in this for the same end. And we take all of those opportunities of servitude, and we take all of those opportunities and tasks that God has given us, and we point them all together in the same mission to accomplish the same goal. If you were with us last week, we talked about this idea of a restaurant, right? That my wife and I got invited to. It was a gift that was given to us, and it was a a multi-course menu, and each one, if you were here, you'll remember me saying they were the size of like a nickel is what came out on your plate, and it was this tiny tasting, and it was this amazing experience. There's like 15 different courses, and what was making that all possible is back in the kitchen, there was a whole bunch of chefs that agreed on a mission to make that plate land where it needed to. That they took their individual talents, their individual gifts, and they worked and aligned around a mission, a common mission to be able to accomplish what they needed to. And this week, as I thought about that, I went back and I looked at this specific restaurant. And I said, what was their mission? And their mission was this, that you would experience a multi-course tasting menu from a chef. So it would be a chef's multi-course tasting menu, and you would experience that. That was their whole mission. Now, what is a mission? A mission is why you exist. So this restaurant exists to provide this experience. And as a church, we said last week that our mission that God has given us is that we exist to see people encounter Jesus. What we mean by that is we will do everything possible to see people encounter Jesus. You could tag with that. It's not my words. I stole it from somebody else. But everything short of sin we will do to see people encounter Jesus. We will give everything we are to see people step into relationship with Jesus, to know him, and to be given new life through him. But we also equally hold that we exist to see people engage in their faith with Jesus. We exist to see people take fresh steps of faith in this journey with Jesus, to grow as disciples. Why? Because the mission we've been given, as we talked about last week, is to make disciples who make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. That it's an ongoing, it doesn't end. And that your servitude and your task all play into helping make disciples of everyone around us. So whether that's here in this room, whether that's what's represented from Prescott, whatever is represented from Prescott Valley, whatever is represented in Paulden, and beyond that into the online family scattered all over, that everywhere you find us, we will be helping people encounter Jesus, engage in their faith with Jesus, and we will be springboards for each other to help empower us to serve Jesus. That's our mission. That's our common goal that we're aiming towards. But what's interesting with the restaurant, while they have this mission of providing this experience, they have a vision. And their vision is how they're accomplishing the mission. And so in the case of the restaurant, what they say their vision is then is through an intimate outdoor dining experience where they use food from all over the world, and it's enhanced by select wine, that they will accomplish this experience for you. So their how is they're going to create this outdoor setting. When we were walked in, we went into the restaurant, and you walked through a couple other doors, you were ushered outside, and you sat outside, and it had been decorated, so it was this intimate experience for my wife and I. And then you couple that with that the food was from all over the world, and it was the best of the best. And then couple that with a wine cellar where they were able to select exact wines to enhance. They took their vision, their how they were going to accomplish their mission, and they put it into action. But it required everybody, every part, from the people who set up the outdoor space, to the chefs in the kitchen, to the wait staff, to the different people who were involved in selecting your wines. Why? Because they were on mission to give you an experience. When it comes to the church, and we're going to talk today specifically about vision, it can be really easy if you've been around church world that when you hear the word vision, you go, oh, here we go. This is where we're going, right? Oh, here we go. This is going to be the 5-year plan. If you've been around church world, you might have heard vision stated this way, that in the next 5 years, we're going to establish 5 churches all over Arizona. And you would go, oh, that's the vision. That's where. But what I want to challenge you with is this, that when it comes to heights, when we say vision, we are talking about how we accomplish our mission. So when we talk about the how, we're not talking about goals, because establishing 5 churches in 5 years, that would be a goal. right? And the problem with goals is this, that the person who sets them, if that person's not there, often those goals change to the next person who comes behind. And what Heights and what we're establishing in this series is that together we're rallying behind mission, which is what we talked about last week. This week we're rallying behind vision. What is vision? Vision is how we accomplish our mission, both individually and as together as an entire church. And so when it comes to vision and it comes to how, this is for Heights, this is where we land. That in a way that is relevant to the community, wherever you find us being the together part of Heights, we will be guiding people to live the life they were created for in Jesus. In a way that is relevant to the community. Okay, so right out the gate, our vision is this. How do we accomplish our mission? It's not about us. It's about them. It's not about us. It's about this world that needs to understand and encounter with Jesus, that they need to engage in their faith. It's not about us. God has put us in a unique place here of Prescott, Arizona, Prescott Valley, and Paulden, and so on and out from there. But we're all in a unique place. And the question we have to ask is, what is it in this space that would make helping people, guiding them into the life that God's got for them, that it was created for them in Jesus? How do we do that in a relevant way to the people in front of us? What that means is this, that it's not one size fits all when it comes to church. Wherever you find us. That might be in your job tomorrow. That might be in your meaningful place this week. That might be together as this. It might be in a ministry this week. It might be in a service. But wherever you find it, we're going to do it in a relevant way to who? To the community that we're trying to be on mission for. And what are we helping do? We're helping guide every single person into the life they were created for in Jesus. You know this, right? That you have a life that was created for you in Jesus. That he paid for a new life for you, that the purchase has been made. It's already been bought. The new life has already been created. And for you as a believer, you get to step into that life that you were created for, that's uniquely made around you, with this servitude and these tasks and this mission that you get to step in as an individual. But our job is to guide people into that life they have been created for in Jesus, everywhere we go, but in a way that is relevant to the community. What does this look like? Some of you might have been to Park Collective. You would know that Park Collective was one of our goals, right? That for the last, what feels like forever, but the last 5 years, we knew that God was having us to create a space in Prescott Valley for people to encounter Jesus, to engage in their faith with Jesus, and be empowered to serve Jesus. And so in Prescott Valley, we originally thought we just create another location, right? We just take everything here and we just do this there. It'll be great. And so we got plans made, and we had our steps out, and we knew what we were going to do. And so we get into the process of moving forward, and God asks us a question. He goes, what do your neighbors need? And all of a sudden, the entire leadership team was like, wait, what do our neighbors need? We have neighbors there. And we began to look and started to understand about the community, that the community has a real need for a safe place for kids to go. That the community has a real need for a place where community can grow, and there can be community space that's usable by the community. That the families of that area needed preschool solutions because there wasn't enough preschools for the amount of kiddos. And so the options that were happening is parents have still got to work, so kids go somewhere else, and it was creating other issues, and harm was being done. That there was a huge need for an after-school program. And so what we did is went back to the drawing board and went in a way that's relevant to the community, that's relevant to them. And so what was stripped out of that was all the things that we love, right? It wasn't a space that we go, this is what we want. It was a space that went, this is what the community needs, and the church utilizes it. The church is there, gathers on a weekend. So things like a sound system and production got taken out. or money got spent different ways, like a playground that's in the center of the building. If you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that playground, never did we think that it would get so much usage that we would have to close once a week just to tighten the bolts on the playground to make the playground safe. But I think that points to it's relevant for the community, not for us. Because today, for us, we're focused on sound issues and being able to use that space. But that's how this thing works. If you're familiar with recovery, one of the things that happened in Prescott is what grew up around us was a recovery community. And we started to ask questions, what does the recovery community need from us? How can we be a part of guiding them into the life they were created for in Jesus? In a conversation with a couple of people, specifically Pastor Bob, Elements was born. If you're not familiar with what Elements is, it's a gathering that happens in this room on Thursday nights for people in recovery. And if you came, you might be offended by it because it's not created for you. It's created for people going through recovery, but it's designed in such a way that's relevant to the recovery community that the recovery homes are able to use it as one of their meetings a week, where we get to be a part of their journey, helping guide them into finding this life that was created for them in Jesus. We get to help them encounter Jesus. And here's what's amazing. From Thursday night, what's grown is this Wednesday night Bible study. And Wednesday night is now a whole bunch of people that were a part of their recovery and in that process found Jesus and now are sitting on a Wednesday night going, I want to know more. I want to grow in my faith. I want to engage in my faith. And now that's grown to Pastor Earl's able to go into homes, and Pastor Bob and others are able to get into recovery homes and actually hold meetings in the recovery homes. But that all started with a vision going in a way that's relevant to the community. What wouldn't have been relevant was to tell the recovery homes, hey, you just got to bring them on a weekend and everything will work out. In a way that's relative to them, not us. Relevant to them, not us. But what are we still doing? We're helping them what? We're guiding them towards this life they've been created for in Jesus. Some of you have been a part of Vital Moms. Vital Moms was a couple of groups of people that went, how do we, in a relevant way, guide moms into living the life they were created for in Jesus? And what came out of that was this thing called Vital Moms, where moms get to come and they get to put their kids in another building and have sanity for 2 hours a week by themselves. But they're not by themselves, right? They're gathered with other moms in community. They're having relevant conversation. There's parts of it that are helping nudge them towards encountering Jesus or engaging in their faith further with Jesus. Our youth kids, if you have teenagers, and this might be good news, this might be bad news. We have camp going on right now. Our high schoolers are at camp in Williams. They got 11 inches of snow. They got more on the way, and I heard they might not make it back tomorrow when they're supposed to come back, which parents are like, yes, keep them. You're going to have them. But why do camps for youth? Why have youth services where if you walk in, you may go, this is way too loud, way too dark. There's too much haze in this room. Why would we do that? Because in a way that is relevant to our youth, we will create stuff for our youth. We'll create events. We'll create services. What? So that they can be guided towards living the life they were created for in Jesus. That's vision. And out of vision, what is born is goals. And today, that you may be sitting there going, John, that's great on a church level. I'm glad you're telling us about the church. But I want to take that same vision and help you understand how it impacts your day to day. And so in Acts chapter 17, some of you are like, man, that was just the intro. It's warmer in here than outside. That's all I'm going to say. But part of what happens in Acts 17 is we're going to jump halfway through. But there's two things that happen for Paul before we get to the part that we're in. And in the first part, he goes to Thessalonica. And when he gets to Thessalonica, he does what he normally does. He goes into the synagogue. He uses very formal language to present Jesus to them. And the Jews and God-fearing Greeks there, some of them believe. And in Thessalonica, some don't. The ones that don't, they go outside and they go to the marketplace and they get a whole bunch of thugs, right? And they actually cause a riot. And in the process of causing a riot, Paul ends up in trouble and he ends up released on bond and pushes on to the next town. So then the next town he hits is Berea. He gets to Berea, and when he gets there, Paul goes back into the same routine he has. He goes to the synagogue, so he's talking to the Jewish leaders, the Jewish church, and he goes into the synagogue. He uses very formal language with them. He talks about how the Messiah is coming, and what the Bereans do is this. They're really eager. They're open to listen to him, but they go away. They study the scriptures to make sure that what Paul says is true. Can I encourage us as a church, we need to be like the Bereans. Don't take my word for it. Don't take somebody else's word for it. When they open the Bible and teach you, take the time to go and study it for yourself so that you can confirm what's been told to you. So the Bereans are confirming, as the Bereans are confirming, the people from Thessalonica, the Thessalonians, they come down with their mob of thugs and they chase Paul out of Berea. So now where we're going to jump in, Paul is landing in Athens. And it says in verse 16, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. So the first thing you get is Paul has some downtime. He arrives in Athens. He's got downtime. He's just waiting. He's waiting for the people, his companions, to catch up to him. But here's what I want you to get is Paul has downtime. His downtime is with intentionality. Why? Because Paul is on mission. Why is he on mission? Because Jesus gave him a mission, right? So Paul is on mission to make disciples. And so while he's waiting, he happens to look around the city, and it says that the city was full of idols. Now, best we can tell from research and from historians that wrote about Athens at that time, the marketplace more than likely was lined with idols. You couple that with temples that had been put in place to other gods, and so there was multiples of those all over, coupled with the idols in the streets. And what we get from Paul is this, that when he sees the spiritual condition of Athens, it says that he is greatly distressed. Now, that word greatly distressed actually captures better as infuriated. He's worked up. There's an emotional reaction to what he's seeing around him as the spiritual condition of people in the city. And the language there of that greatly distressed is connected back to the Old Testament when God was walking with the nation of Israel and the Israelites would decide they were going to serve foreign gods and not God. He would be provoked to anger. He would be provoked to reaction. He would be jealous for them. The same language is captured with Paul, that inside he's distressed, he's provoked. There's an emotional response. And maybe just in capturing your own vision for your life, when was the last time that you looked around your world that God's got you planted in? So whatever your day-to-day looks like, when was the last time that you looked around and you were so greatly distressed? You were so concerned by the spiritual condition of those around you that there was an emotional response in you that you're like, I just can't leave them alone. Don't miss it. Paul's having this in his downtime. He's in his waiting. This isn't when he's on task, when he has his serve tag badge on and he's like, okay, I'm a servant right now. Paul's going, I'm a servant all the time. I've been given a task. I'm part of the mission. And here today where God has my feet, I'm distressed by the spiritual condition so much so that I'm going to do something. And it says that Paul does what his normal pattern was. He goes into the synagogue and he reasons. That word reason is to use formal language, meaning he used very religiously correct language in the synagogue. That he talked to them in such a way that they could understand through their view of the scriptures. But it also says that day by day, Paul was in the marketplace. That word marketplace is to the wording connects in the original language to gather people together, to bring people together. In the marketplace, you had bankers, right? The financial people. And next to them were a whole bunch of artists. And next to them, there were musicians mixed in. And next to them, there were philosophers that wanted to talk about the big things of life. And next to them, there was the local church. And next to them, there was the media, which were the heralds of the day, right? That if you wanted to know the news, you had to go stand in the marketplace and hear it spoken to you. And so it was a gathering of all kinds of people. And it says that whoever happened to be there, day by day, Paul would go into their context, into their setting, and he would begin to talk with them. Why? Because he was so distressed by what he saw. Verse 18 goes, a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where he said to them, May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting. You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. So Paul, day by day, goes to the marketplace, and he has conversation. And that conversation, I want you to catch something. Just because you do something in a way that is relevant to the community, it does not mean you water down your message. It does not mean you change your message. It does not mean you're not on mission for the same message. And it says that Paul was telling them about this Jesus and this resurrection. And a group of people, two schools of philosophy, the Epicureans, which what they believed was that this life is all there is, that God is disconnected from this life. He really doesn't care about us. He's really not involved. And so the Epicureans, they believed that once you die, that's it. You return to death and life over. And then the Stoics, they were different. They were pantheists. They believed that God was in everything. So you could even find God in a human. And they also believed that God was had this providence, and there was divine providence to life, and that life was going somewhere. But both of these groups believe very, very differently than what Paul did. And what Paul does in this moment is he is taken by them, and some believe that this could have been a moment of kind of like a riot, like they're like, we don't agree with what you're saying, and take him. But the context kind of leads towards a different feel. And the context leads towards that they took him because they were curious about what he'd had to say, that they wanted to continue the conversation. So what I want you to catch is this, that people who thought very differently, people who had very different values, an entire community that held different standards, because of the way Paul had stepped into their world, they embraced him and said, hey, you got to come talk to all of us. And they lead him to this place called the Areopagus. Now, the Areopagus is basically a small hill, a stone essentially, and it's under the shadow of the Pantheon. The Pantheon was created before Jesus was born, and it's to the goddess Athena. And so you have literally in the shadow where Paul is now about to give his speech, so to speak, his talk to all these philosophers, you have the shadow of idols around it. And I want you to catch when Paul steps into this moment onto this hill at the Areopagus, he doesn't start with formal language. He doesn't start with the scriptures that the Jews are using. He starts with, hey, I see that you're very religious. Can I encourage you that everyone you meet is very religious? How do I know that? Some of you are religious about football. It's that season. Some of you are religious about books. Some of you are religious about certain activities that you do. Some of you are religious about vacations because I hear about them and they're awesome. But we can be very religious about a lot of things. And what Paul is doing is he's connecting to, in a relevant way, to the human soul. But what I love is that Paul then goes on to say, I've walked around. I've taken my time to walk around and learn what you care about, what you think about, what you claim to be the core. And he says, I've even carefully observed your objects of worship, the things that you worship. He says, I've taken time to notice and observe and learn about your objects of worship. When was the last time that you walked the world that God has you in, and you just took time to walk around and carefully observe and learn and hear? Church, can I be real honest with you? And I hope this doesn't offend you, but sometimes I think we just need to close our mouth and listen. The church has become so opinionated about so many things. And the things that we're opinionated about and the things we're fighting for are not the mission we were left with. And what happens is we become so opinionated and we're so quick to give our opinions and we're so quick to care about our voice being heard in the conversation that we close the ears of people. And when you close the ears of people, guess what? They don't want to listen and they won't. We live in a time when cancel culture is more real than it's ever been. And they're waiting for the soundbite from you that they go, I'm just done. I don't even want to listen anymore. Paul was no different. He's in a marketplace where there's a group of people who think completely different. But catch the heart of what he does. He steps in and he honors what is good about them. He honors the struggle. You realize that in our culture, there are so many objects of worship. Success is an object of worship. People will give their entire lives to be successful, to be financially wealthy, to have the right car, to have the right life. They'll give everything. You realize that fame is another one in our culture. I just heard a story about the Peach Bowl girl. I don't know if you've heard this or not. But the Peach Bowl girl was at a football game. She was in an Ohio State game supporting her brother. And the camera just happened to catch her. And instantly, people were like, who is that? That girl's so pretty. Who is that? And the internet went on a search. They created a video. And the video got 4 million views to find out who this girl was. And when they discovered who she was, she went from having barely any followers to 170,000 followers. She became famous in a moment for doing nothing but cheering on her brother, and a camera noticed. Because our world is obsessed with what? Fame. Our world is obsessed with being somebody. And it's a strange time when you can be somebody for doing absolutely nothing. But we have these objects of worship. And they're all around us. Do we have eyes to see? Do we slow down to hear? Relationships are another one. How many people will give everything to get into a relationship because they think it's going to solve everything that they need it to solve? I mean, we don't even have to get started on phones. Speaking of objects of worship, you know how it's an object of worship? Look how many hours you give to it a day. Remember that part we started with? Time, the commodity of time is one of our most valuable possessions, and yet we drip it away on a device watching other people's lives. And I'm not bashing phones in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that they have these moments where they can grab our hearts. But you know what? All of those things that we have that we're searching for, that when it comes to these objects of worship, we're just looking for things internally because we're all the same. And what Paul does is he steps into this moment and he goes, I know we're all looking for the same thing. because we were created by the same God. What I love about the next part of his conversation here, and you can read it later, but the next part of his conversation is absolutely beautiful, is that modern day scholars that study this thing for a living and write books that are way smarter than I could ever even dream of reading, let alone writing, they don't agree. They can't figure out. They're like, where did Paul get these words from? What is his source? Can I tell you his source? The Holy Spirit. Because he stood in a moment that the Holy Spirit had designed with people. And he begins to talk about a God who is creator. He begins to talk about this God who is for them, a God who is in the details of life, a God who one day will judge. And he proved it by raising Jesus from the dead. He didn't change his message. He just made the message meet in a way that was relevant to the community that was around him. And what did he do when he was there? He guided them into the life they were created for in Jesus. What I love about it is it says that some believed. And I'm like, why? And some of you might be like, I don't get it. Why is that good? Because Apostle Paul, superstar Paul, didn't have 100% conversion rate. That should encourage us. Why? Because we're just servants with a task on mission. And what are we there to do? Just guide you into the life that you've been created for in Jesus. But guess what? Like we learned last week, it doesn't depend on you. The work isn't on you. God is the one that causes things to grow. You're just a servant. And so who has God put in your community? Do you have eyes to see what's there? Do you feel so deeply for their spiritual condition that it moves you? What I love about the end of this story is they look at Paul and they go, hey, we got to hear you again. We got to have you back because we want to know more about what this is. Can I encourage you that that's the goal of what you're doing? You're on the journey for the long haul, not the moment. That you're just creating a space to win an ear. That they would look at you and say, hey, we got to talk again. That's the greatest honor you can get. And keep guiding them into the life they were created for in Jesus. So on a church level, how are we accomplishing this? We'll talk about goals next week and where we're going over the next year and what the plan is and where God's leading us. But you can know this, that where God leads us, it will be anchored in our mission, which is to see people encounter Jesus, to engage in their faith, to be empowered to serve. But how we will accomplish that in a way that's relevant to the community, not us. Wherever you find us, we will be guiding people to guide people to live the life they were created for in Jesus. Wherever you find us. So online family, if that means you're in Washington State, guess what? You're guiding people to live the life they were created for in Jesus. Paulden, that's you. Just guiding people to live the life they're created for in Jesus. Prescott Valley, the same thing. In a way that's relevant. Prescott, we're going to do the same thing. This is how we live it out. But that's on a church level. I'd love to close today with you and the Holy Spirit. I'd love to give you an opportunity before we get out of here and the hustle and bustle, playoff football's going on, there's food to eat, there's cold weather to dodge. There's a lot of things that distract us when we leave this room. Before you leave this room, what I would love is for the Holy Spirit to speak to you. I would love for the Holy Spirit to answer some questions for you. And so the way this is going to work is we're just going to reflect. We're going to put questions on screen, and as each one comes up, all I'm asking of you is that you would just ask the Holy Spirit, Holy Spirit, what does this mean for me? Holy Spirit, speak. And let God speak to you about how you live out the vision everywhere you go to guide people in a way that's relevant to them into the life they were created for in Jesus. And so the questions will come up on screen. These next moments are yours, and then Kyle will come and close out our time.